Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Chat and Games, your weekly gaming show. I am your host for the evening, afternoon, morning, whenever it is that you're listening to this, Melvin Rodriguez, and I am joined by the always sexy voice in the business, Mr. Matthew Howard.
Hey.
Hey, man. So, this week we got a bunch of different news that we're going to chat about. That's why it's called Chat and Games after all. The main focus, though, of this week is we're looking into the horizon. We're looking into 2022 now, Matt. We are in December. There's only a few little things that are going to happen here. The biggest reveals are going to happen during this week when you're listening to this podcast because it is the Game Awards. And there are a few things that the host of the Game Awards also said that we're going to be discussing during this show. But remember, before we get into that we are a weekly gaming podcast that you can find on any podcast services, including Spotify. But if you also want to watch along with all the trailers or all the things that we're talking about on visual form, you can also find us on YouTube by searching Chat and Games and be able to follow along with us there. But without further ado, Matt, let's talk about what I believe is another pivot and a big pivot that PlayStation is going to be doing to be competing with Xbox in terms of value. And that is, there was some reports that PlayStation is working on the Game Pass equivalent of their services. Okay, before I get into the news, what were your immediate thoughts when you heard this news?
Good, because I think Game Pass is a really, really good service from a consumer standpoint, so I will take more Game Passes.
Okay. From a consumer point of view, it seems like good. It depends on how it's implemented. But according to Bloomberg, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, who reported the project, it's codenamed Spartacus and is expected to launch in spring of 2022. It will provide subscribers with access to a range of both modern and classic for a monthly fee. This article that I'm reading from is coming from Eurogamer by Matt Wales. He also mentions that citing sources familiar with the project as well as documents he has reviewed directly, Bloomberg says the launch of the service will see Sony's two existing PlayStation subscriptions offering, PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus, merge into a single package with Sony retaining the PlayStation Plus branding while phasing out the PlayStation Now. Okay, man. First of all, I'm going to ask you, Matt, because you're not in the PlayStation ecosystem. Do you know the difference between Plus and Now?
Nope.
Okay. That's a good thing that they're removing the other one because I am fairly certain that a lot of people do not know in the general public about PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now is their streaming service, which is, again, sort of the equivalent to Game Pass, but not it at all, where you pay a monthly subscription and you get to do the game streaming. It's not like you get to download the game. You do through streaming, you get to play the games that are in the PlayStation Now catalog.
Right.
PlayStation Plus is the normal subscription that was similar to Xbox Games with Gold, which they give you 3 free games a month, depending on your subscription. Like as long as you have your subscription alive, those games will be for you to download and play whenever you get in them. However, you have to be a PlayStation Plus members when those games become available because otherwise you won't be able to redeem them and you won't be able to have them later in the months. So if you subscribe to PlayStation Plus in 2013, you got a lot more value than subscribing on PlayStation Plus in 2019, for example. But to me, overall, this is exciting. At the beginning, we thought it was expected. Because given how popular Game Pass is becoming in terms of providing value to the player, you pay either $10 to $15 a month. I'm talking Canadian, by the way. And you get the ability to play all the catalog the same way that you do with Netflix. Some games leave every month. Some games come in every month. Some they stay for the life of the subscription because, well, those are most likely going to be the Microsoft first-party games. But I think PlayStation will definitely benefit from this in terms of showcasing you need to buy a PlayStation because aside from Xbox, PlayStation doesn't have a PlayStation PC equivalent platform yet that it can use to showcase the PlayStation Plus subscription. So
right
now, not only do you have the value that they were going for over the long run is we're going to make really amazing games that you can only play here. And then 3 years down the line, you're going to be able to get them on PC or something like that. That seemed to be their strategy going there. But if you provide them with this extra piece of value, now you have this a bigger thing that people can go in and check out.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
that said, from the sounds of it, they won't be having like brand new first party titles on this like day one.
That is correct.
Which is what Game Pass does, and is why that's so significant.
That
you can get like your Halo Infinite and stuff day one release through Game Pass.
Which is, I think, one of the biggest things that's going to differentiate the two. Because, I mean, having Halo Infinite on your hands through Game Pass day one, which you're going to be able to play on the single player side, we're talking, because obviously the multiplayer is free to play.
Yeah, multiplayer is free. But
just having it in there is great value. What I think is going to be interesting too is the third parties that come into play here. Because now you got two different platforms where you can potentially put your games, and we're back into what the internet loves to call the console wars, to see which freaking game gets into your platform of choice. Because right now, Xbox is kind of leaning into, he got a few of value of the games that are coming. For example, Back 4 Blood was one of the games that came like day one to Game Pass, and that is as a third party that published that game. It wasn't Microsoft. There was another one, Outriders, came to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and now came to Xbox Game Pass PC, and that is also third party. So now the competition is going to come to the third parties. First of all, they're going to have to convince the third parties that this is going to be great value for their games to come into this platform. And they also need to convince them to come into your platform exclusively. And that's when I become and say, okay, here we go with the exclusivity deals again. And that is when the player base becomes fractioned again. But any other thoughts on the Xbox Game Pass? Or PlayStation Game Pass?
The Sony Game Pass?
Yeah, sorry.
I think we'll need to know more, but I'm glad they're looking at that model and saying, this is something we want to do at the very least.
Yeah. Again, this is all just from the Jason Schreier's Bloomberg article, so make sure to check that out on the description of this podcast, so you get to know a little bit more. But again, this is just early information that we're getting from that article. The game PlayStation has said nothing about this yet, but it will probably say something in the months to come. If it's coming out in the spring, you either do it. I would hope that you do it through a state of play, just because this is a big PlayStation news that you get people excited about. Although now with this article, well, maybe a little bit less excitement, given that people are kind of expecting it now. But there's also the possibility that we get to hear a little bit about it during the Game Awards. Now, another piece of news regarding PlayStation is they're working on a weird new controller there, man. So this is again another story coming from Eurogamer, but this one by Ed Nightingale. This basically, Sony has reportedly patented a new controller for use with mobile devices. The patent was published by Sony Interactive Entertainment's Japan division and shows a PS4 SKU controller with the screen in the center. Only the controller is part of the patent, suggesting it will be used to slot a mobile screen in the center. So according to VCG, the patent describes a left side grid portion on a right side grid portion gripped by the left and right hands of the user. as well as a shaft portion that can be tilted by the user and detect the tilting direction and tilting amount of the shaft portion. So you got a little bit of like motion sensing on this peripheral itself. So, Matt, when you hear about a PlayStation controller, do you think this is because PlayStation is going to do a little bit more on the mobile space that they were doing in the past? Or do you think they just they've loved their PS4 controllers so much that they thought it would be a great idea to put them on mobile devices?
I know for a fact that we have another story about them doing more stuff in the mobile market.
Okay.
So maybe both.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't have much to say about this one.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I mean, for me, it's just interesting that they're doing a PlayStation 4 SKU of the controller. I mean, for a fact, we know that there is a PlayStation controller. By the way, I'm just showing it on the screen. That's why I'm stumbling a bit. I wanted to show it to everybody that was watching on the YouTube version. Obviously, if you think about it, if you're listening to this, the PlayStation 4 controller, imagine it being really stretched out in the middle. Imagine that touchpad that you have in the middle of the controller just stretched out and bigger, and that's where you slot in your phone, but everything else looks exactly like a PS4 controller.
Yeah.
Now, talking about the PlayStation making a bigger impact on the mobile market, I really want to see how that is received overall, because obviously the mobile gaming space is gigantic. More games are trying to release their game on one platform and moving into the mobile ecosystem, because obviously you got a lot more users in there in a lot more countries that you're able to access through this platform. League of Legends is a big example. When they did the League of Legends Drift, they have been a PC only title for I don't know how long League of Legends have been out, but it seems to be a while. And just recently, last year, they launched it on mobile, and it has been a great hit. The same with the Genshin Impact game. That technically was already a mobile specific game, but the ability to launch on all the different platforms already proved to be a very profitable kind of game. Now, Nintendo has been going into this ecosystem too, with their own, like with the Mario Kart, they had the Mario Run, and they also have some Animal Crossing, although that one I hear less stuff than I do hear about the Fire Emblems game that they also had in there. But what they do is they don't try to put their games on their mobile platform. They try to port a version of their IP that might work for the mobile space. And I think, based on the Sony article that we heard about, is Sony's going to try to do the same thing. They think that their IP is already well known enough by everybody and well beloved that they are able to make mobile specific games for them and people will recognize them and go and get them. While Xbox, on the other hand, what they're doing is they're really putting a lot of effort into the Xbox Cloud or xCloud, which allows people to stream games from a server on any device. So that way you can play any of their catalog games on their Game Pass catalog on xCloud and be able to play them on any different device.
Yeah.
From your perspective, Matt, which one do you prefer?
I haven't actually tried playing like a full game on my phone. I doubt it would work for me, but I'm sure that there are people out there that is like a very appealing option for people who have powerful enough phones to do that. Basically, it's like a kind of like a Switch almost. You have an ability to play full games on the go. I think generally it makes more sense to make something mobile specific when you're making a game in the mobile space, something that can play to the strengths of that platform.
Yeah.
I have issues with some of Nintendo's output in that space, but I think their approach at least is fine as far as making something that is like specific to mobile instead of trying to just port over their games as is.
Right. I think that approach is more exciting for me, just because we get more games, and
yeah, and you get to see like maybe a new take on some of these games that you wouldn't see on console because it's it would be too small of a title to really come through.
right. And I think the other aspect is the bandwidth that you're gonna need to stream these games. And first of all, I don't do a lot of travel necessarily. So because I don't do a lot of travel, I don't necessarily need to have my AAA gaming experience on the go to be able to play from a hotel. Because the way that I see xCloud working for me is not necessarily that I'm going to be playing the game on the bus or on the train. I'm going to be playing it on a different location without having to bring my console.
Yeah.
For example. Or I don't have the Xbox console at all. I just have xCloud and I'm able to play them from my... I'm going to be able to play a game on my home setup.
Yeah.
For me specifically, because I own a PC that is good enough to run modern games, and I have my PlayStation, and I don't have an Xbox, but I have a Windows PC, which allows me to play all the games though that come from Windows Xbox Gamepass for PC. So I don't have that problem. So to me, that's why to me it's more exciting to have a brand new IP experience on the phone, because I can play that game on the go. I can play it while I'm on the train, while I might commute to work, and that is more of what I'm looking for my mobile gaming experience. Because if I do want to play something big, I have the ability to do so. And if I do travel somewhere to get to play some of these games, I'm okay with not playing the AAA quality games. And sometimes I just bring my Switch. I am fortunate enough to own a Switch as well, so I have that on my availability. What I'm really thinking about here is the less hardcore gamer that don't necessarily own the consoles or a powerful PC, is they just want a game for a little bit and get into the gaming space. What will be better for them? And honestly, given my own experience with the Xbox platform on PC, I feel like that's just more of a hassle. I would rather just buy a game on the store, download it, and it's ready for me to play. That's just how I see it right now. Maybe obviously the xCloud is a long-term strategy that they're doing as they develop more. Also, the bandwidth for the internet becomes more and more developed on different areas. Because again, somebody playing on South America or some on a less internet accessible area of the different countries, they will not even have the possibility for either of this. So I'm just hoping that, again, long-term strategy, Xbox Cloud might make more sense. But in the meantime, I am more excited to see new experiences on the mobile phone.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I think that's enough a Sony talk for a little while. Oh, they were gonna call us the Sony Pony podcast in the front of it. But it's a different view, because they used to call us what did they call the Nintendo people? Because I know they call them Xbots. Nintendrones. Oh, okay. So that's the
there
one.
You go.
That's the one we were called before, because we just talked about Nintendo all the time. But you can call Matt that, I'll allow it. Let's talk about remakes. I don't have a good segue. I usually try to, but no, in this one, let's just cut right into it. A remake of Resident Evil 4 apparently has been leaked in the wild by the voice actor for Wesker. So this is a story coming from IGN. It mentions that DC Douglas, the voice actor known for this portrayal of Resident Evil's Albert Wesker, has allegedly shared confidential concept art for the unannounced Resident Evil 4 remake. It was reported by BGC. By the way, BGC, you are killing it this week. The similarly leaked concept art was shared on Twitter. According to the tweets by Beware Creepy VAS account, the image in the questions allegedly shows the sketch of Wesker as he would appear in the separate ways section of the remake. Matt, any surprise to you at all that Resident Evil 4 is getting a remake?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but like this is one of the cases we kind of talked about this last week with the Chrono Cross remake. Resident Evil 4 is one of those games that I think is perfectly playable as it is now. Like, it's got a little bit of awkwardness. You can tell it was made with a GameCube controller in mind for sure, but it's still a very good game,
right.
even played today. Like, the older Resident Evils, I think, definitely needed the update. They were classics in their time, but are kind of rough by modern standards in a lot of ways.
Right.
And they sort of like gave them more of a Resident Evil 4 like type of gameplay anyway. So like what's going to change for RE4? Are they going to make it like RE7 and 8 where it's first person or something? Or is it still just going to be
I doubt it.
over the shoulder? And in that case, it's almost like what's the point really?
Well, in this case,
I guess
would
we'll
think
have to wait and see how much
the control scheme, I would think that they would try to change. Because you still have those tank controls where you cannot aim and move at the same time. So I think that's one of the things that you would change in the remake, especially given how they did Resident Evil 2 and 3. I think the control schemes that you go with on Resident Evil 4 are those. Now, does that change the experience of Resident Evil 4? Because I feel like I played Resident Evil 4 this year, by the way, for the first time. I hadn't played it before. It was an interesting... everybody just mentioned like, oh, you need to play Resident Evil 4. And as liking as the other Resident Evils, I'm like, okay, I need to dive in. I mean, this is the most beloved Resident Evil, I would say, based on what I hear from everybody. Obviously, everybody has their own favorites, but overall, I think this one is the more highly praised one. And rightly so. Like, it was a really great experience. It still holds up until this day. And I think the tank controls do add a certain element to this game in regards to how you battle with the enemies, because the AI itself is not very super menacing in terms of like, it comes rushing towards you. It's very slow. It's very meticulous to make up for the fact that you are not able to aim in different ways.
You are also kind of slow and awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you change the movement controls, you also have to change the AI and the way that they behave. And I wonder if that also impacts how this game also feels at the end of the day. And in a way, it could impact it. And that might be what they were going for, because it's a remake. It's not necessarily a port, because these games have already been ported to everything. Technically, one thing that I really wanted to try out, although is the Resident Evil VR version, because technically that is also a different control scheme if you think about it. And I wonder but that is a little bit more closely resemble of the tank controls, because on VR it's not like you are rushing and moving too much, I would say. So I am interested. I think all the Resident Evil remakes have been going in a good direction. Resident Evil 2 specifically, I think that was a really fantastic remake. I really loved it. Resident Evil 3, I hadn't played. For that one was a little bit more poorly received, but I don't know if it was because of the game itself. You spent a lot more time running from a chase than you did in Resident Evil 2. Or was it because of the remake? I'm not entirely sure on that aspect. Now, Resident Evil 4 will be interesting. I am excited for people that are less, I wouldn't say less forgiving, but less willing to try an old game because of the way it looks and controls to get to experience this game.
And all said, I am still like interested in how this game turns out for sure. I will be keeping an eye on it. So
now, would you try it? Because I know you're one of those people, man, that you try one, that you buy the game, you own it in a different platform, and that's the way that you're gonna play it.
Yeah.
You don't really buy remakes at all.
It would have to be a substantial overhaul, I think, to convince me.
Okay, fair enough. I am not.
Which it has a chance of being, because the other ones were, but it would have to be in a different way, because it is, if they are sticking with that same gameplay style.
Right. At the very least, I don't think they will add multiplayer to this game. I don't think it will change so substantially that they do that. But
I mean, don't some of the current releases have a multiplayer mode?
No, they released the Resident Evil. What's the name of it? I completely forget. But there was
like Mercenaries or whatever.
Not Mercenaries. That was a different take on Resident Evil, and that's a different story completely. I'm talking about
some kind of
like an online game where you can play as all the characters from Resident Evil that came out like around the time that Village came out this year. But I am really blanking on the name. So technically, that's a separate game. That's not.
I thought there was something that was part of this, but maybe I'm getting confused and getting it mixed up with something else.
Well, you let us know, everybody, if we're completely messing it up. Who's right, Matt or Melvin here, when it comes to figuring out where Resident Evil Online contains. But, online comes with its own set of problems anyway, man. And one of the biggest problems, including for one of the biggest multiplayer launches of this year, is the fact that we have cheaters. And let me tell you, I freaking hate cheaters. I think you ruin the experience for everybody else. And I'm really, really wondering what the big gain that they're getting from cheating is. If it is to kind of get into the competitive scene, once you get into the big competitive tournaments and you cheat, they will notice. Because first of all, you have to do it in person, and there's a lot of monitoring on them. And the other fact that I'm thinking about is like, okay, why do you cheat? Do you feel some sort of satisfaction getting, I got 200 kills? But
as a cheater,
I
think that is it. Like, it's the same reason people will, on some online games, make like alternate accounts where they're lower level so they can play against lower level players and just like easily win against them.
Oh yeah, smurfing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, I hate both of them. I think it's just I know you want to feel, I don't know, like you're superior to some other people, but cheating doesn't make you superior in any way. But anyway, the main thing here is there's a lot of cheaters in Halo Infinite, and there's a lot of cheaters everywhere. And we know for a fact that Call of Duty was one of the main things that was drawing players away from the Warzone is just the amount of cheaters and anti-cheat. And since Call of Duty didn't have an anti-cheat system, it mostly, and a lot of lobbies, you will encounter cheaters, and those will be the ones winning the Battle Royale. And that doesn't feel good. Also, cheating in Halo doesn't feel good when you're doing 4v4s, and it's more moment-to-moment action, and you get to see the cheater over and over and over again, killing you on every single time. Now, what people are trying to do is, again, Halo used to be a console-only game. It used to be only on Xbox. Now, with Infinite and also being free-to-play, it came to PC. Not only it came to PC, it came to Steam, which means it's very widely accessible, which means with more accessibility and being on PC, the easier it is for cheaters to get into it. So what Xbox players have been asking from the community in a big Reddit post, by the way, that you can find on the description below, is for them to have an option to turn off crossplay so that they can only play with people of their ecosystem. So if they want to play just Xbox specific, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be any cheaters at all. It just means that it's way more difficult for the cheaters to get into it. It's more of a hassle to get cheaters to play, to do on console than it is on PC. And Matt, I think it's a reasonable request to turn off crossplay. What do you think?
Yeah. Given that the game has this problem, like the one thing that you would worry about is the player base going to be big enough to support like this multiplayer ecosystem if you start splitting it, like allowing people to split it off into their own groups. But considering this is something the players are specifically asking for because it is ruining the experience for them, I think the bigger worry is people dropping the game because of stuff like this.
Right.
Than splintering the player base too much. So yeah, I think ideally they would have that option.
Yeah, obviously it's not necessarily that you can just turn on and right away. It's like, here's the option.
Yeah, like it's going to take some time if they care to support the game more at all, but
But I wonder what the answer, if the answer is that being able to do that for them, or actually find a better way to combat cheaters. I think the main thing that they posted in regards to the cheater aspect is cheaters are gonna happen. It's just a matter of gaming at the moment is very difficult to combat. As a developer myself, I can attest to that. It's a very difficult problem to solve. There's as soon as you put up a cheating detection system, the cheaters find a new way to do it. So it's always a never-ending combat that you're gonna be facing there. But I think what I like about that request mostly is you're also playing with people that are on the same level field, because you're not gonna be playing even with people that play with mouse and keyboard. Though you can hook up one to the Xbox again, but that's more rare and more difficult. But you're playing with people that are, again, on the Xbox ecosystem. You're both on the same level when it comes to controllers. If you wanted to play with your friends, you toggle that off and you play with people on PC. That's totally fine. But you know what you're getting into by turning that on. So I think it's a reasonable request. I think it not only adds things for the cheating side of things, but also from just the accessibility for people to play how they want to play, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, 343 has been, I would say, at least very vocal about them hearing the requests of the players and making changes when they need to. And the main thing that I'm thinking about here is because of we talked about, since the game came out, the beta for the multiplayer came out, actually. We talked about the Battle Pass and how that has been on its own rookie start, just because of how difficult it is to advance it and how people feel like it's a bit unfair. Objectives that don't really have anything to do with the game, and it doesn't add to the experience at all. It detracts from it. At the very least, they're doing little changes here and there to help you out. Like even more this week, when they updated so that the players, the XP that they gain from the first 6 matches or 7 matches is actually higher than it was before. You get like a bonus from playing the game on the first 7 matches. So as a player that is a casual, more of a casual player when it comes to multiplayer, I am more than happy with this. It will let me progress my battle pass on the 7 games. I don't even know if I get to play 7 matches a day with all the different games that I also want to play. So this is actually super good, and I'm glad that they're making the changes very quickly. It seems that they're hearing the players, and I'm all for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another game that was this week that unfortunately we had to say goodbye to, or we will be saying goodbye to, is Titanfall. Has been dealing with a lot.
Original Titanfall.
The original one, yes. Yeah. Titanfall 1 has been dealing with a lot of problems with hackers and DDoS attacks, which is a form of hacking the game, where you basically spam the servers so that they don't have, their performance just goes way down. And unfortunately, after a long time of battling those issues, what their Respawn decided to do is basically to no longer put the game on sale. And not only that, they're also saying that the game will no longer have access to multiplayer starting next year. I'm going to check out the news title here. But while I look that up, Matt, what are your thoughts on this matter?
It is always a shame when this happens, just, again, for game preservation reasons. And in this case, because it seems there were still a lot of people playing this game. Yep. Which is impressive to me. Like, there must be something to that. The fact that this is a game with a sequel out that they could be playing instead. Mm-hmm. A sequel that, to my understanding, was a lot better received even. And yet, clearly there's still something about Titanfall 1 that draws people to want to play that one specifically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is too bad. I would think these guys, with the amount of money they have, should be able to keep it going and maybe do a better job guarding against that stuff, but I don't know the specifics of it, so
Right.
I won't pass too harsh a judgment. Obviously, when a game does get to a certain level of performance, it just doesn't become feasible to keep the servers up. But yeah, I don't know of the exact specifics with this game or what it would take for them to do that. So
yeah,
I'll just stick with it being a shame without casting any further blame.
No, and it makes sense. I mean, the main thing is they obviously might have a network problem to deal with here. Because, and obviously depending on how you architected your networking layer for the game, that is very difficult to change without changing the entire game or putting a lot of manpower to actually go in and basically change the core layer on that game. And that takes time and a lot of time and effort. And I don't think Respawn is going to be seeing any gains from it aside from good community sentiment,
goodwill. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think that's what they're looking for, especially because they already have a big game out and that they're supporting on the daily basis, because we're talking about Apex Legends. So I will read to you what the Respawn put on their Twitter, just to get a little bit of more sense of why they decided to do this, and you make your own judgment based on that. But it says, pilots, Titanfall is part of our DNA at Respawn. It's a game that showcased the ambitions of the studio when it was first released more than 7 years ago, and it continues to be a beacon of innovation that we strive for in all of our games. We made the decision to discontinue new sales of original Titanfall games starting today, and will be removing the game from subscription services on March 1st, 2022. We will, however, be keeping servers live for the dedicated fanbase still playing and those who own the game and are looking to drop into a match. Rest assured, Titanfall is core to Respawn's DNA, and this incredible universe will continue. Today, in Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends, and in the future. This franchise is a North Star of caliber of experiences we will continue to create here at Respawn. Thank you from the entire Respawn team, and that's it. So, based on this,
so yeah, it is good that at least they are keeping the servers
yes.
up. I missed that part originally, but
it's just that they're making it way less accessible for people to get it.
Yeah, so yeah, people will have a hard time getting into the game now.
Yeah,
you have to buy like a used copy or something, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So in the long run, the people who are still in it and really want to play it, they will still have it. However, I don't know. I remember when I got Xbox Gamepass and it comes with EA Play and it has this game. I remember downloading it and trying to get into a game, and I just couldn't. I already couldn't get into it. Obviously, it's more widely accessible, so more way to DDoS attack it. But I don't think if people, I just want to understand why they're getting so much attack from it on a game that is this old. And the people doing the attacking, which I mean they shouldn't to do it at all. They're just basically pissing off whoever remaining fan base they have on this original game. Like you said, a lot of people already moved on to the Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends.
I wonder if it's just because it's easy and the people who like doing this stuff don't really care like what game it is specifically, as long as they can. I don't know. I don't know why people do some of the things they do.
It would be just fascinating to maybe just see the intention, because I don't think I will ever understand it. I just don't.
Yeah, get into the mind of one of these strange humans.
Yeah. And to end things off with one last thing that was a little bit unfortunate, but you make your own judgment. I want to stay impartial in this sense. But you know who also wants to stay impartial? Jeff Keighley. So they meant Jeff Keighley, who is the basically organizer and main person of the Game Awards, mentioned that he will not be taking sides on the Activision Blizzard fiasco that is happening. But later, after some of the blowback, he did mention that Activision Blizzard is not going to be taking part of the Game Awards itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is interesting because when they mentioned that, it blew all over the web. At least on the when I mention all over the web, I'm talking about the small section of the web that gamers own, because I don't think anybody else even again
cares,
understand or cares about this aspect. But it did blow up on the gaming in the gaming space. There, people making their own opinions about it, just because even the CEOs of different companies, even though they necessarily haven't gone public with it, they all have talked about how much they don't support Activision, the current way that Activision Blizzard is running, and the way that the many problems that they've been having, especially that over the years, but that they've been put a spotlight on in the recent years.
Yeah.
When it comes to this particular aspect, what do you think about not including them in the Game Awards?
Good.
Okay.
I'll make no bones about my stance on this, but yeah, I think the whole like, oh, I'm not going to take sides on this is pretty like flaccid industry speak that I'm just not a fan of. Like it's very obvious that there is a right side to this, I feel like. In my opinion.
Right.
But
we're talking about our opinions here. Like you can say what you think.
Yeah. And the fact that they aren't going to be part of the Game Awards does seem like maybe a bit more of a stance for whatever he says. Like clearly by doing something you're taking some stance, but I do think it is the right one. Like it's good to keep the pressure on them, and this is the first thing I've seen apart from like the dropping stock price or whatever that like this is something that will actually affect them and force them to maybe actually take some action. Like this is the kind of stuff we need to actually see any change happen. So yeah, good. It might be a small thing, but at least it's something.
Right. Yeah, it's hard for me to say like, oh, just stay impartial. Devs are being mistreated from the very beginning, and that just boils my blood, especially when it comes to minority groups or women, and it just makes it especially as again, I said it before, as a developer, it's just not something that you look forward to, or you see, well, not necessarily look forward to, but you like seeing on an industry that you love so much. Because at the end of the day, it's all about what we think about being creatives in this space and creating amazing experiences. And you get to see this, it just detracts people from actually wanting to do it in the long run. And people just, I know from a fact that of many different people that have left the industry just because of how tough it is, even though they love the process of creating games overall.
Right.
So what I wanted to see, sorry, that I'm stalling a bit too, is because I wanted to see if, although they mentioned that Activision Blizzard is not going to be part of this year's Game Awards, if the games themselves are nominated in any of the categories. So far, I haven't been able to find one, but I think they might have. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, so again, it is a bit hard because I don't want to diminish like the work that the developers have put in,
right?
All the developers who have done nothing wrong. But at the same time, it does ultimately feed into the corporation, and the corporation like is the main beneficiary of stuff like this.
Right.
So yeah, it's I won't like I won't judge them for keeping those games in and potentially giving them awards, but it is a bit of an icky feeling seeing like games celebrated that were made under circumstances like this.
Right. It depends on how you celebrate it. It's like, oh, congratulations on Activision Blizzard. I would say congratulations to the developers that actually
congratulations
made this
to the development team. Yeah.
The people in the trenches, how they call it.
In the trenches. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine to leave them in here because, again, I don't want the people that really worked on this game, not only were they affected over all the conditions that they were doing, but they were able to develop a nice experience on top of all that. I think that has to be celebrated.
Yeah, and if we started cutting games for stuff like that. It's like, okay, Metroid Dread's out because they didn't credit their staff. Like, we would lose most of the games that were not developed under like unproblematic circumstances, which I don't know. Just saying that also makes me kind of sad that this is like the state of the industry. So
I was just gonna say,
I guess if you're gonna have a Game Awards, you have to accept that that's just how it is right now. Hopefully it'll get better.
But at the very least, I feel the industry moving in the right direction as things are being showcased now. You're no longer doing this in the background. This happened a long time ago.
Yeah. Shining a light on it is very definitely a step in the right direction, and the fact that it seems like people keep putting the pressure on Activision Blizzard, and like with this as well, not letting them be part of the Game Awards it's all good.
Yeah,
we're making progress slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. As soon as we're heading in the right direction, we'll get to a space. I cannot wait for the future where I get to talk to little Melvin and little Matt, and tell them, the game industry is a good place. It's okay to game.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we got for in terms of news that we wanted to talk about. In terms of games that we have been playing, I mostly been touching more on the Pokemon side. I got 2 saves going, like I mentioned last week. One of them, I'm almost at the Elite Four. The other one, I'm only on the second gym. That's the one that I've been streaming. But making good progress. And overall, I feel like I'm enjoying the game for the sheer amount of nostalgia. I don't know if there was anything in there that I would say, if you played the original ones, you must play this. So far, I haven't found that aspect of it yet. But that being said, I am having fun with it. For some reason, it stuck more than it did with a Sword and Shield.
Yeah,
I'm almost at the Elite Four. I'm actually gonna beat this game. So Matt, on your face. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe because Matt said I wouldn't finish it. There we go.
It's all out of spite.
Whatever gets you through the game. Whatever gets you through the game. You know what I mean? But that's what I've been playing. Matt, you want to chat about yours, or you want to leave it for next week?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. So I have been dipping into a game. I'll just touch on my initial impressions. I'm hoping to maybe play a bit more of it later, but scrounging around the Game Pass looking for games to play with my friends.
Right.
We ended up trying out Deep Rock Galactic.
Oh, okay.
So Back for Blood I found to be kind of disappointing, and I had heard someone say before I played it something along the lines of like the industry has progressed a lot since Left 4 Dead, and Back 4 Blood kind of feels like it hasn't, and that Deep Rock Galactic is kind of the best current iteration of that type of game.
Interesting.
Looking at this game, it never looked appealing to me. It's like dwarves in space, and they're just like running around caves and stuff. And yeah, it never really looked like my kind of game, but I decided, based on the praise and based on the fact that it seems to be like generally well received, I thought we'd give it a try.
Okay.
So I've only played a little bit so far, but yeah, it is pretty enjoyable. So the premise is you play as these dwarves and you go around mining. The different missions take you through caves where you're looking for certain minerals or certain like precious objects, and you have to deal with hordes of spiders that'll kind of spawn in. And it's also class-based, so you got like different classes with different abilities. And the main thing that I found like struck me as a pretty fun idea was each of the classes has a specific way of interacting with the environment, not just like the weapons they have.
Okay.
So like there's one that can make build platforms. There's one that can make like grapple lines that all the other players can use.
I see a flare gun.
They can all dig, but there's one that has like a mining tool that lets them just make these big tunnels very easily. And the whole like all the areas you go into are like totally destructible. You can just like dig into the side of a wall and huddle out. But yeah, we were having a good time with it. So the one big downside was we did try to play a second time with another friend, and they were unable to connect to anyone else, and we couldn't figure out how to fix that. So that was kind of a shame. But overall, it's a cool game, and I do wanna get back into it and see a bit more of what it has to offer.
That's really cool. I remember I did hear about this game. I know that is praised by the people that have played it. To me, it looked like Torbjorn, the video game, and I don't like Torbjorn from Overwatch. By the way, that's a character in Overwatch, in case you didn't know. There was also a lot of mining, and with mining comes sandboxing.
Minecraft.
And that looks Minecraft, and I'm like, yeah, that's not me. That's not up for me. I had no idea that this was a Left 4 Dead-like experience as well, or at its core.
Yeah, it's very like mission-based, very focused on having 4 players tackling an objective together with swarms of enemies coming in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I like the class-based thing, making it feel like everyone has a specific role when combat comes around. You've got like the guy with the flamethrower who's a bit more in melee range. You got the fighter with his big minigun who's like the main damage dealer. And yeah, you also have like the engineer who can throw down turrets in good spots and deal damage that way. It's neat. I like it.
That's cool. It does look cool. It does have that indie feel to it. That being said, it has like a very low poly style. That doesn't mean anything bad, by the way. Just mention it out there for folks. If you can also look at it, watch it along with us on the YouTube channel. But yeah, no, it looks interesting. And you mentioning that it's actually a better version of what we experienced with Back 4 Blood could be interesting. To give it a shot, especially if it's on Game Pass and we can all get it.
So it is free if you have Game Pass technically. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, very low risk if you're already in on the Game Pass
ecosystem. And that's the beauty about it. And that's why when we get PlayStation, if we have that too, that would be great. But a better way to tell people to get into the game if you can find a PlayStation though, because those are gonna be hard to get even coming into 2022.
Yeah.
All right. Is that the only game that you wanted to talk about today, Matt?
Yeah. I'll leave it at that for today, I think.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for this week then. Thanks everybody who joined us today during our weekly Chat and Games gaming show. Remember, you can find this podcast all over the podcast services, including Spotify and iTunes, if you want to go check those out. If you like what you see, or if you didn't enjoy it but you want to give some feedback, please feel free to email us at itsallfunandgamestv@gmail.com. But we would rather that you also give us a review on iTunes podcasts, because that will allow more people to get to know us, get to listen to the podcast, and it would just make us find us organically, which would be really, really awesome to see. And remember that if you also want to follow along with everything that we talked about in terms of visuals, so you can watch us on YouTube by searching Chat and Games and interact with us there. Leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we were about the Resident Evil multiplayer. I'm still very curious to figure out what the actual thing is. I'm almost certain that it's a different game, not embedded, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, you might be right.
But in any case, let us know by writing on the comments below. Or again, by joining us on the Discord, which is also on the description of this podcast. We want to just grow this community and find more people that enjoy games the same, love games, and are respectful to each other. All right, Matt, any final thoughts?
Bye.
This has been Chat and Games, signing off.